On election night, Texas Republicans celebrated new victories in a historic Democratic stronghold. Parts of South Texas turned red for the first time in decades. Those victories raise a big question. Is this an anomaly or a sea change that could sway Texas politics for years to come? Our Ryan Chandler spoke with a Republican leader on the border and breaks down the results.
We are seeing tonight generational change in South Texas.
That's not an exaggeration. It's been many generations, in fact. Starr County, for one, flipped red for the first time since 1896. It's a South Texas swing fueling a Republican rout.
Our Hispanic communities aren't just leaving the Democrat Party. They're coming home to conservative values they never left.
President Trump won 14 of the 18 border counties this year. The Rio Grande Valley, all red for the first time this century.
What the Republican Party represents now is what we stand by.
Zapata County Republican Party Chair Jennifer Thatcher says the nationwide Republican performance was fueled by the problems in her own backyard.
Security of the border was a big deal for South Texas.
Yeah.
And it was something that was overlooked. The borders were literally open, whether they want to admit it or not.
It's just a real abject democratic collapse.
After years of groundwork, Republicans are reaping the rewards.
We shouldn't be surprised by this for two reasons. One, Republicans have been telling us that they are trying to do this and have been making demonstrable efforts. And two, I think there's been a tendency, particularly among Democrats, to underestimate the potential for Republicans succeeding in this.
For some Latinos, the switch is not a drastic shift, but a return home.
God, family, faith, it's everything that we embody as a Latino community.
Ryan Chandler, State of Texas.
Republicans also had the goal of flipping congressional seats in South Texas, and that led to some very close races on election night. Joining us to talk about a couple of the most competitive races is Sandra Sanchez with Border Report. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So Sandra, we spoke with you a few weeks ago about Democrat Vicente Gonzalez defending his seat against former Republican Congresswoman Maya Flores. Gonzalez won, but how did the margins compare to the last election?
Yeah, he did win. Gonzalez is a Democrat. He went against a repeat challenge from Mayra Flores, the Republican. This time he won by 51%. She won by 48%. Last time he won by 52% and she won by 44%. But what's really interesting is the number of voters. Almost twice as many voters came out for Mayra this time. Last time she had just under 60,000 votes, and this time she had almost 98,000 votes. So, Vicente had 102,000. Last time he had 70,000. As we saw throughout the state, throughout the nation, record number of people coming out to vote this time.
So counties that voted for President Biden 4 years ago flipped red this year. What is driving this shift at the border, Sandra?
Yeah, 8 of the South Texas counties went for Trump this time. The last election, we only saw Zapata County, which is just to the west of Hidalgo, go for Trump. Everyone else was for Biden. You know, it had been talked about the last election. There was going to be a red wave. It's been talked about that what this used to be a Democratic stronghold is now leaning Republican. I think the numbers obviously showed that. That is proof. I can tell you that here in Hidalgo County, I'm in McAllen, has always been more of a Republican area. The movers and shakers for this area have been Republican. And it's just in the last couple of years, they're coming out, so to speak. They're not afraid to say, we are Republican. The mayor was the chairman of the Republican Party for Hidalgo County. Although the mayoral race here in McAllen is not partisan, it's obvious which side he leans. And, this just showed it. Even in Cameron County, which has always been a Democratic stronghold, Republicans made tremendous gains. And that's where Congressional District 34 is that we just talked about.
The Democratic stronghold that you mentioned has existed in South Texas for decades. Was this shift so large surprising?
You know, I mean, we've been hearing about it. I actually kind of expected it the last election. It was kind of surprising to me in these kinds of numbers, but I can tell you, I was embedded in Congresswoman Monica de la Cruz. She represents Texas Congressional District 15, which includes McAllen. I was at her watch party. No one, election night, no one was concerned that she wasn't going to win another term, her second term. They weren't even paying attention to the boards. They weren't paying attention to the television screens. It was one big giant party, and everyone there just knew she was going to win. She won by bigger margins than she had. Again, it was a repeat challenger from 2 years ago, Michelle Vallejo. And, you know, I spoke to University of Texas Rio Grande Valley political science professor Andrew Smith, and he said Democrats have just not reached their base. The residents in South Texas have been disenfranchised. The income here is low. They feel economy, obviously, being a #1 issue here, as well as the rest of the state and the country, but immigration as well. They feel frustrated by it. And they came out in numbers and they voted.
Well, we know Democrats certainly aren't going to give up, but what is the party going to do in South Texas moving forward?
In South Texas, I haven't heard anything. As you know, the chairman of the Texas Democratic Party, Gilberto Hinojosa, has announced his resignation. He's actually from the Rio Grande Valley, and he says he's not going to hold this position anymore. So it signals that changes are definitely to come. You know, the Republicans seem to be gaining speed. The Democrats seem to be licking their wounds, and no one's come up with any solutions here that I've heard of yet.
All right, Sandra Sanchez, thank you so much for being our eyes down in South Texas. It's very helpful.
Thank you.
Voters in a conservative Texas city reject a proposition that would have increased restrictions on women seeking abortions. Why the fight over the ordinance may not be over yet.